So now let's talk a little bit about the training part, because this is where we're really going with this, in terms of, okay, all right, I understand. Now I need to get my kid to train. I got this 11 to 18-year-old kid. What do I do with them from a training standpoint? People always say, oh, do bodyweight training. This again, bodyweight, it's a dumb idea. And again, the strength and conditioning people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Bodyweight training is a dumb idea. Bodyweight training is a dumb idea. Because strength and conditioning is based on the idea of progressive resistance exercise. Body weight is generally not all that progressive in a child or in a young 11 to 14-year-old person. So it seems like a really good idea when people say, I just do bodyweight stuff with my kid. That seems like you're sort of carrying the party line and talking the right talk, but you're not. Because for upper body, weights are easier than body weight. It's easier for a kid to learn to bench press than it is for him to learn to do push-ups. And they'll like it a lot more. So when we're talking about upper body pushing, we're going to talk a lot about bench pressing. You know, people are going to say, what about bench press? Overrated exercise. It is an overrated exercise, maybe for a professional baseball player. But it's not an overrated exercise for an 11-year-old. It's like, I put it in the fundamental category, and you'll see that later on, right? So we think about body weight before external resistance for lower body. But as soon as they can handle body weight, we're going to add external resistance, because we need that progressive resistance idea. It might just be a 5-pound dumbbell. It might be a 15-pound bar, whatever it is, but we're going to add some weight. But we're going to think about external resistance before body weight for upper body. It's not as simple as, oh, just do body weight stuff, right? Because when you think about this, how do you really get better? Like if I got a kid, if you said to me, Mike, I'm buying into this now. I understand what you're saying. Well, I'd say 2 days of strength, 2 to 3 hours of skills every week. That's what you really need if you want your kid to get better. And I don't care, again, you can pick your sport. You can pick a couple of sports. But there should be, if you've got that kid, 11 years old, 2 days of strength, they should be in the weight room starting that learn to train and that train to train process. That's the stuff that we're going to really focus in on. And then what else do? You limit the games. Games are for parents. I love games. I had to learn to like watching practice. But I never had to learn to like watching games. I liked watching games. Everybody does. That's not necessarily good, because we go back to that same riddle, right? How many balls or pucks can you use in a game? One, games are not good for kids getting better. They're good for the good kids. We got to remember that, right? So why? But strength and conditioning again. What about And again, everybody will go to. So what about overuse? What about stress? What about stunted growth? But they don't care about playing one sport. But they want to argue this point with you. The one thing that I tell parents all the time: your skill level after age 14 may not change that drastically, but strength and conditioning will maximize that skill. If I can take a kid who's pretty skilled and get that kid bigger and get that kid faster and get that kid stronger, we can make a really significant change in that athlete, male or female. It does not make any difference. We're talking about both groups here, and you'll see that when we get into the stuff outside. You'll see both sides of the coin, right? So why lift? Increase, like I said, increase size, increase speed. When you start, if you said, hey, I really want my kid to play in college, okay. Size and speed are probably going to be the limiting factors in a lot of sports. And probably speed more than size, right? But the reality is the difference between a Division I player and a Division II or III player will most often come down to speed and size. That's just reality. And if you want to run faster, you need to, 1, run fast, and 2, get strong. What about periodization? Again, now this is back, so hopefully the strength and conditioning professionals, don't worry about periodization. It's always in season for kids. You're never going to get a kid where it's not in season. You're never going to get a kid who's thinking, it's just the way that it is. You might get a couple months in the summer when a kid isn't playing something, but I know for my kids that never happened. There was always something going on that they were involved in. And as I said here, most kids have a primary sport that goes almost year-round, and then 1 or 2 secondary sports that overlap with those. That's the reality of the situation. But you've got to be able to look at that and think, okay, that means my kid needs to, someone might look, well, does that mean my kid needs to lift year-round 2 days a week? Yes. If someone was to ask me what the key for my daughter was, from 11 years old on, 2 days a week of lifting year-round from the time she was 11 to the time she was 18. And every year, she passed more and more people. Every year, she was a little bit better than someone who was better than her the year before. And I firmly believe in that. That's why I've been doing it with my son since he was 11. Same exact thing. Get in here 2 days a week, get started, get started learning to train, because it takes you, particularly at this age, it will take you a year or two to get that kid proficient in the weight room, to get to the point where they can actually start to get some benefits. And this, I love this graphic, Mladen Jovanovic, but he was a former intern of ours, but he had put this up, simple to complex. Simple, less coordination, less control. Complex, more coordination, more control. Kids need simple. And I think we try too hard to make it complex. We've got to be thinking simple. So, what do you need to do now? You've got to begin that learn to train process. You've got to be thinking, okay, this idea is training like farming. This is one of my favorite quotes. The best time to plant a tree was 5 years ago. The second best time is today. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, when should I start? Ideally tomorrow. If you're in that situation where you're looking, if you're watching it for your own kid, well, when should I start this weight training process? Tomorrow. Maybe today if you're watching it in the morning. But start. Don't think, because there is no second best time. How do you do it? You make strength and conditioning a priority. You tell your kids it's important. You have to realize that you are influential. Again, as a parent, you're hugely influential. As a strength and conditioning coach, you're hugely influential. And you're going to start with your youngest middle school kids, because in 4 years, you've changed everything. It's amazing to see the difference in a kid that starts young in the weight room versus a kid who doesn't. Because it's a head start. It's a literal head start in the development process, a real development process, right? And I love this from Dan John. Movement first, volume second, load third. Don't worry about load. Load is third. We're not worried about, I tell our coaches all the time with our middle school kids, I don't care how much weight they lift. I do really care how well they lift it. So when we start this learn to train process, it's all about learning.